Well, good morning, folks. This is going to be a great Leading Your Best Life because it really is about the heart of business and business building, business creation. John Denton, I've known him for a long time. In fact, I remember Mal Emery years ago talking about what a great bloke John Denton was. And John's story is fantastic in and around building businesses, creating value, creating wealth. But John, welcome to Leading Your Best Life.
Thanks, Leigh. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Mate, as I said, Mal Emery was the guy that probably put us in touch years ago. But I wanted to, in particular, talk to you because, you've spent so many years in the area of helping people not just build businesses, but build businesses that create wealth and create an asset. But John, before we get into that, let's talk about the John Denton story. Where has John Denton evolved from? Give us the John Denton story.
Oh, gee, that goes back a long way. I'm actually trained as an electrical and electronic engineer.
Okay.
But and I started life in the steelworks, but then got into computers. That was probably the best bit of advice I've ever had in my life, was get into computers. I found out while I was doing that as a service engineer how much salespeople got paid for selling stuff that they didn't know anything about. So
Yeah.
I became a salesman, and anyway, long story short, became a manager, and then decided, well, I could do all this better for myself if I worked for myself. And I took out a license to run a leadership and management training business. And I got into it and won a bit of Mal's direction. You buy, build, and sell. So I got into it with the idea of selling and getting out. After 3 or 4 years, the problem was I fell in love with the business, fell in love with the clients, everything we were doing. And it went on for about 6 years. And then I took on a business partner. We put 2 businesses together that were very similar. And the key thing here, and I did a podcast on this, Leigh, about having a successful partnership.
Very important, no?
We got into that partnership with a common goal, and that was to exit with equity in 3 years. And when the 3 years was up, we had a business that was saleable because we got some really good advice on that. We, having both had a sales background, thought we could sell it ourselves. And this is an important thing, Leigh, for business owners to think about. Selling a business is not a simple thing. We were ex-salespeople. We thought we could do it. We were part of a franchise. With the help of the franchisor, we put a price on the business. He advertised the business. We spent 6 months, Leigh, going on a roller coaster with potential buyers, and they all fell through. The last guys to come and see us, we gave them so much information, they went up and set up in competition with us.
Oh, wow.
And that's when I went and saw Mal. I was all for slitting my wrists and walking away. And he referred me to a broker, and he said he's the best broker in town. If he'll take it on, he'll sell it. So anyway, we went and saw one of their competition, and then we went and saw the guy we were referred to. And he said, look, you've got a really, really good business there. Yes, I can sell that business. And he put a price on it, which was now 25% more than we just failed to sell it for.
Wow.
So, that's a key thing for business owners. We didn't know how to value our business and put a price on it. And we were underpricing it by 25%. So we gave him the job. We said, right, if you can sell it for that price, you got the job. And he said, selling a business is a process. And what makes us different to other brokers is that we follow a very strict process, and we won't deviate from that process, and it will sell the business. That took time. And I got very frustrated and tried to book the system and kept getting told, no, stick to the system, stick to the process. Anyway, long story short, we did. And sure enough, went to the market, got offers, and he sold it for us and got 100% of the price for it. And it sold easily, smoothly. There was no repercussions after the sale, because again, that can happen if you don't do things right up front. And that business is still going. In fact, I've referred people to that business. It was a training and development business.
Wow.
In leadership and management training. But yeah, so it was, and having gone through that process, I thought, right, I'm going to go out coaching. That was my goal, to do some coaching and mentoring. And I'm going to get into the niche of helping business owners get their businesses ready for sale.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really where I got to how I am, where I
Right.
am today. Because
What a story.
knowing that most business owners just don't know, because it's not the sort of thing a business owner does more than maybe once, twice, or times if they're a serial buyer, seller like Mal. You know, so you don't know what you don't know.
Incredible, mate. Incredible. As you said, there's so many great lessons in there straight away. One, finding the right partner. Not that you necessarily needed the partner, but you had the partner, I suppose, which then added value or added equity, or one, you went for 1 + 1 is 3, thinking, well, but just get on that. Why did you form the partnership? Why didn't you just keep going on your own?
Yeah, because you can't do everything on your own. And it had got to the point where it was a really good business, but it needed to scale up. And the quickest and easiest way to do it was to take on a partner. And in fact, the guy approached me. He'd come from the UK. He said, I need to get my permanent residency, and then I want to sell the business. And I said, well, I want to sell now. I've been in the business 6.5 years and stuff. And so we had that common goal. So it enabled us to get over that hump of being not between a small and a medium-sized business. You know what I mean?
So
where
the
you're doing
scaling up,
everything yourself.
as you
Scaling up.
say, scaling up such a critical, because again, if you're going to actually add value or create equity, then of course you have to have scale. And let's just talk about that for a second, because the other thing is, and again, I literally just the other day gave clients 5 of the managers copies of, or the owners and managers copies of the E-Myth, and that whole idea of, you know, you're technician, manager, entrepreneur, and the technician, butcher, baker, candlestick maker, accountant, is so in love with doing the job that the very thought of building something that you're going to sell, it's a complete paradigm shift, isn't it? So do you come across that as an issue or a challenge when you're working with people?
Yes, it's a great point, because people come to me and say, I want to sell my business. And then I say, so what's your business? Oh, I'm a chiropractor. Who does the whacking and cracking? You know, oh, well, I do. Oh, well, you don't have a business, then you have a practice. So a distinction that I start off very early with is, do you have a business or a practice? Or it may be a trade. You know, trade people that are doing the work, like you say, they don't actually have a business, because they are it. Take them out, there's nothing left. And the point is, a practice runs on an expert or a tradesperson or a skilled person, whereas a business runs on systems.
Yes.
You know, you can take the owner out of a business, the business will keep going. But you take the practitioner out of a practice, nothing happens. So when it comes to selling, a practitioner has to sell to another practice. So that chiropractor could sell his database, assuming that it's a good database, assuming that he's kept a database. He could sell that to another practitioner. So that's not selling a business. It's a slightly different process. But yeah, and I did a presentation for the Australian Computer Society, or I did a half-day workshop for people in the IT industry that were looking at setting themselves up as a business. And what you said about the mindset, I started off getting them to understand that, well, do you really want to build and run a business, or do you want to be doing the work? Because to create a business, it's a mindset shift, as you said, Leigh. You got to get that mindset of, I'm actually building a business here.
And I'm
And
building something.
So if they love doing what they're doing,
yes,
it can be hard for them to get out of it.
Well, that's as you say, they love doing it so much that the cracking, if they're a chiropractor or the butcher or the plumber, but in doing so, they're not setting it up so that it runs without them. The very thought of Bob Smith plumbing not having Bob Smith, which again is a whole other thing around, if you want to build a business you can sell, The naming of the business, I would have thought, is important too. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a good one. Yes, it's better if the business is not named after, if you don't name the business after yourself. I mean, of course, there are exceptions like Dick Smith and Rick Hart and these people, but boy, you've got to be pretty big and very well known. They are the brand, and there's a
Yes.
guy around called Daniel Priestley. I don't know if you've come across him, got a book called Key Person of Influence. And he talks about people buy you as a person are more valuable as a brand, and that's probably okay in professional services, but not in plumbing or an electrical business or something like that. You're quite right. It's more attractive to a buyer if it doesn't have your name in it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let's. I mean, I'm thinking straight away of a mate of mine's father-in-law had this successful kind of retailing business, but I never forget at the time, my mate, who's quite a very successful business person, said, "Look, he didn't. Did he call him a loser? He may have even done that. He's quite ruthless with him. So here's this guy. He's run a business for 20 years, and he's just shut the doors and walked away. He didn't sell it. No, he didn't have an asset." So my mate, who actually is a valuer by profession, immediately said, "What a waste of opportunity, or a lack of foresight or planning." So I assume over time you've seen that, and therefore, what are some of the common mistakes you've seen? And again, let me just go to your website, because I know you've got some fantastic articles and a whole range of great things there on your website there, John. In terms of there's things people can read, buying a business, who'll buy your business. So there's so many great articles, and I'm sure somewhere in there there will be discussion around what are some of the common mistakes people make that you've seen, that you kind of coach against.
Yeah, there is a blog post there called Roadblocks to a business sale. The biggest mistakes, one is building the business around yourself, which we talked about already. If you can't step away from the business, if you're indispensable, well, the business is not saleable. So don't build the business around yourself. Put systems in. And again, that's a common problem is the lack of systems, the lack of profitability, not keeping financials up to date. There's I've got a whole checklist of things like that. But yeah, the commonest one would be building the business around yourself, being too involved in the day-to-day business, not having your financials clean. Again,
What do you mean by clean?
keep all the personal stuff out of it.
Right.
Again, a common thing for small and medium business owners is to put things through the business. And yeah, that then starts to make it messy. So when we look at a business and we look at the value of the business, we do a thing called add backs and adjustments. What we try to work out is it's called the PBITDA, the proprietor's earnings before interest, depreciation, tax, amortization. And so what we do is we take the accountant's finalized accounts and then look at anything in there which is discretionary to the owner that another owner may not necessarily have. So there might be interest on loans. So we can add that back because the new owner may not have loans. The owner may be paying himself a lot of money through the business, which a new owner might not. We add back the one owner's wages and super. And if it's a partnership, we only add back one owner's wages and super, because if the other owners are leaving the business, then they have to be replaced and so on. So it gets quite complicated, and that's why I do an audit for business owners as a starting point. Let's go through all of this and pretend that I was a broker for 12 years, Leigh, so I've seen pretty much everything that you can see in that time that's good or bad about a business when it's selling. So I go through and do what I would do if I was taking the business on to sell it. So it's getting all those personal things out. You'd be horrified sometimes at some of the things that I see. And the other thing about keeping them clean is, the financials are your dashboard for your business. So all these things that I'm talking about in terms of getting a business ready for sale, you should be doing in your business anyway. And then you'll get to a point where you may not even want to sell it. You may just put it under management. You may bring partners in, whatever. You've got options. Sorry, but going back to cleaning up the financials, making the financials tell you, the business owner, and any new business owner potential business owner looking at it, what's happening in the business. I used to see, and still do occasionally, financials where on the P&L it has income, and the business may be selling products, it may be doing servicing, it may be doing a whole lot of different things, but the only breakdown is income.
All right. So it's not broken down into the income streams.
Correct.
Products. Yeah.
Correct. And again, just from managing and having a good business for your own benefit, you should be doing that anyway. Categorizing your customers, categorizing your products and services, knowing where the profit's coming from, because that's how you drive your business, And
absolutely. So the dashboard is far from being accurate when it's just one line income. Absolutely. And the other thing you mentioned before, talking of assets and saleability, is just, you said, categorizing income, categorizing customers, the use of a CRM, the use of a database. I remember years ago people saying, "Oh, the only reason Rupert Murdoch bought MySpace was he just wanted the email. He wanted the millions of people's contact details." And so it wasn't the business; it was actually the database. So just on that, what have you seen over the years in terms of good practice versus bad practice in use of databases?
Yeah, that's a good one. Just on those examples, don't forget Microsoft paid a fortune for LinkedIn, billions of dollars, and LinkedIn wasn't making any money.
Yeah.
They bought the database. Dollar Shave Club got sold to Unilever, wasn't making a lot of money, but Unilever wanted the international database. Anyway, so what have I seen? Yeah, businesses that run on their accounting system. So when I say to them, "So where's your database of clients?" "Oh, it's all in Xero or MyOb or whatever." I said, "No, that's not your database. That's your accounting system. It doesn't do marketing, So that's the worst end of it, is when the response is, "Well, yes, it's in Xero or MyOb or whatever financial package they're doing." But then I've seen some really fantastic ones as well, where they've implemented a good, and there's plenty, in fact, there's hundreds of CRMs out there. And people get confused as well sometimes between a CRM and an email marketing package. They can be the same thing now because they're all merging into the same space. But MailChimp, really, I still see MailChimp as being an email marketing application, not a CRM. I use a CRM, which is purely for sending all my emails, tracking all my clients, knowing when I last contacted them, knowing when to recontact them, and things like that. But I use another application completely for doing my automated marketing and my newsletters and so on. And the important thing with any CRM is to work out what you want first and what you want to do with it. The same with email marketing. And then find the most suitable application for it. I've seen people spend years and an absolute fortune in trying to shoehorn their business into an ERP system, which is just a bigger version of a CRM and a marketing system. It does product manufacturing and all that as well. But instead of working out what they need and how the business operates and finding the right tool, they get sold on a tool or an application and then spend a lot of time and money and effort shoehorning the business to work in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's
someone sold them something that's been a good commission for the salesperson, but not the right product for the for the business owner.
Yeah, and often it's way more than what they need. You know, they buy a Rolls Royce and they don't need that. They need a Hyundai, you know?
Yep. So just on that, do you mind me asking what CRM did you settle on and choose that you use?
Yeah, it's one called, and no, I haven't come across anybody else in this country that's heard of it. It's called Cloze, CLOZE .com. And it's very popular in America in the real estate industry. But it's suitable for any industry and any business like mine, where it's a professional services type business. I'm not doing manufacturing or product sales or e-commerce or anything like that. So it's a client relationship management system. It tells me I can set up how often I need to contact people. It reminds me to contact them. It does template emails. It does some automation. It's got AI built into it now, like a lot of other things. So if I sent you an email, Leigh, saying, yeah, I'll follow up with you next Friday, blah, 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 it will automatically come up on my agenda in that app. By next Thursday, it'll be reminding me I've got to contact you.
Yeah, brilliant.
So
Close.
it's about managing the relationship. Yeah. And it's not expensive either.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Good. Well, people, I'm sure, will look into that. I mean, everyone has everything from HubSpot, big companies using Salesforce. When I remember we had Infusionsoft, Goldmine. There's been so many others along the way. What is it? Active Campaign is another one. There's so many of them out there. As you say, choosing the one that actually serves you best. And you've already said the asset often is how well coded is the customers in terms of would be A, B, C, or whatever, however you code them, or belong by product or geography or all of those things. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. When I worked in the computer industry, we had a saying, you know, garbage in, garbage out. If you
Yes.
same with accounting, finance systems, if you don't put the information in correctly, it's not going to give you good information out.
Yep. And you've touched on here systems, which again, let's say it's the plumber or the chiropractor. Marketing systems, often people are not thinking in terms of systematic marketing and lead generation, and of course building up the value of the business. As Mel says, you know, what you do before the sale is 10 times more important than what you do after the sale or during the sale, because obviously he's marketing, but the point is building up brand value and building up a pipeline so that, as let's assuming a person buys it, that there's a marketing system there that's feeding leads and feeding customers, as distinct from, well, I've bought the business, now where do I get customers from? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Systems really fit into sales and marketing, admin, governance, management, and then you've got operations. And but in sales and marketing, when buyers are looking at a business, they look at what the business owner is currently doing and say, well, could I do that? Do I want to be doing that? And one of the things that can put buyers off is if the business is heavily reliant on salespeople. Salespeople aren't necessarily the easiest people to manage by their nature. So if you've got really good marketing systems that's going to generate leads, you've got good lead conversion systems and processes, you've got good follow-up, then you've got your ongoing nurturing and, you know, keeping clients warm and building that database up. A lot of businesses, the value is in that database. I mean, you've already touched on that, Leigh, and Mal was always big on that. You know, the gold is in the list, and that's so true. So the more you can systemize that, the more you can automate it, and there's so many tools available these days. It makes it really attractive to a buyer, for sure.
The gold is in the list. In fact, literally a mate of mine who lives just around the corner just sold his business. And in fact, he bought it, I think, 15 years ago. And there were two income streams or two major products, which after 2 or 3 years, he sold off one of the income streams, I think for almost the price he bought the original business for, which then meant as he had this business for the next 15 or so years, he's literally just sold it, and he's very happy with that process. And in fact, the person who's bought it can immediately see how he can take this and make it bigger, better, scale it, and so on. So at some level, I suppose, you're looking for a buyer who maybe is looking to say, hey, well, mate, I can actually manage this, or I have bigger visions for this than where you're at. Because again, often people may be tired and their energy level in that last 2 or 5 or maybe 10 years has dropped off. What are your observations in that area in terms of the buyer and the buyer's vision?
Yes, good question, Leigh. There are different types of buyers out there. So it's not always about the financials and the profit, which is the traditional way of valuing a business based on that PBITDA, as I mentioned before. But in my last couple of blog posts, I talked about, well, you know, who's going to buy your business? Where's the value in your business? And that database, and I can think of numerous examples. And in fact, the training business that I had, that my partner and I sold, all we were selling really was the database, because all the training programs belonged to the franchisor.
Right. So there's no IP. There's no, you weren't selling off. So the IP was actually owned by the franchisor. Yeah.
Correct. When you're in a franchise, you don't own anything. Which is a point I make when people phone me up and say, can you help me? I'm thinking of buying a business. What is it? Oh, it's a muffin break in shopping center. Say, oh, you're getting into a franchise. You're not buying a business. You will not own anything. So the client base was basically what we sold. And I can think of other businesses that I've sold or been involved with where that's the case as well. So a buyer can be a strategic buyer, like Microsoft and Unilever we talked about, and those other examples. They can see that they can sell other products to that same database. Right. So either they can see that they can grow the database and build it up, or like with Unilever, you know, Dollar Shave Club was only selling razor blades and razors. That's all they sold. Unilever, of course, sell all the other products, have done for donkey's years, for men's shaving creams, aftershaves, all those sort of things. But they only sold through retail outlets. And then they saw Dollar Shave Club, who only sold online through subscription. So, of course, Unilever said, whoa, this is a good way. We can buy that list, and then we can sell all our other products to that list. You know, so sometimes people can see they can grow the list, or they can sell other products that they're already selling to that same list. Same with Microsoft and LinkedIn, you know. So there's a different types of buyers. There's strategic buyers who will look at, and it might be the IP that you've got that's unique that people want to buy. So there's strategic value in that. It might be the list where there's strategic value in that. So the different types of buyers see businesses in different ways. You know, then you've got the financial buyer. He's looking at the profit and how can I grow the profit? And you'd know with your sales training, Leigh, it's not always about the turnover. It's about the leftover. You know, no point increasing your sales if you're not increasing the profit.
Yeah. On the turnover, not the leftover, not the turnover. Very nice.
Yeah. And yeah, so, and other people will buy a business because it's their lifestyle. They just want to be doing what the current business owner is doing. You know, coffee shop's a good example.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I could run a coffee shop. That's a nice way to go after my corporate life. And then they work out it's not quite as easy or as much fun as, but anyway.
Particularly if they go, I want to make bread. I want to make bread so that the bread is so fresh when I make the rolls that go with the coffee. They'll go, hang on, I'm up at 2 a.m. and then I'm opening the shop at 5, and then I'm home at maybe 3, exhausted in the afternoon. And then we start the whole thing again, and it's 6 or 7 days a week. Whoa. Which again comes back to that whole reverse engineering the lifestyle you want, which is that principle, which they talk about in the E-Myth of, well, what is the lifestyle you want? And your business supporting your lifestyle as distinct from being a prisoner of the business and like suffocating your lifestyle. I mean, as he says, you had the entrepreneurial seizure. Stuff it. I'm gonna get out of corporate life and I'm gonna run my own business. That's the kind of jump that people make. So as you say, that reverse engineering the lifestyle, and whether it be coffee shop, I want to be a fitness, I want to run a fitness training business or a gym or whatever it happens to be. Pretty amazing. So the people that come to you, I suppose, do both buyers and sellers come to you in most cases from your lead generation, or mainly sellers come to you? What kind of people tend to be attracted to you?
Yes, it tends to be mostly the sellers, and my real target market is the baby boomer type business owners that have got, I call them bricks and mortar type businesses, but not professional services businesses, so not accountants, coaches, consultants, but people with a product or manufacturing or a bricks and mortar type business, and they're looking at retiring. Having said that, there are always exceptions. I've taken a client on this year, a couple of guys who came to my Business Ready for Sale workshop and then said, oh, let's have some discussion about you working with us. Now, they've got a pretty young business and it's growing really well, but they're very, very smart. And they've sat down and said, well, what's our end game? Begin with the end in mind. And so we sat down and worked out a 5-year plan of where they want to get the business to in 5 years' time. And that's so important to have that end game in mind. And I tell people that are starting up a business, don't start it until you know how you're going to get out of it. And if you're buying a business, don't buy it until you've thought about your end game. How are you going to get out of it? And the same with getting into a franchise. One day you're going to get out of that franchise. How are you going to get out? And talk to other franchisees about how they got out. Do your due diligence. So, and again, because and I will answer your question a bit more in a minute, Leigh, but with the older, more mature age business owners who are looking to retire, and you'd resonate with this, I'm sure, I really say to them, look, you got to retire to something, not from something. So when you've sold this business, what are you going to do? Because that business may have been the person's life for the last 20 or 30 years. And they get up in the morning and they go and they in the business. Well, when that business is gone, what are you going to do? What are you going to do with your time? And it's particularly, there's stats around about, how long people live after they stop working, males particularly. So it's having a life goal. And again, your business is a vehicle to have the lifestyle that you want. So as you were saying before, Leigh, design the life that you want and then get into the business that is going to give you that lifestyle. I know somebody that bought into a franchise and it was an okay franchise, and I'm not anti-franchise by any means. It's a good way for someone coming out of the corporate world or someone starting up to get into business and learn business. But in this particular case, this couple had bought into a franchise thinking they were going to have a business, they were going to make lots of money, lifestyle was going to be good. They found that because they were attached to a shopping center, they were opening 7 days a week. They couldn't afford to pay the penalty rates, the weekends for the staff because the profit margins in the product weren't good enough. So now they're having to work in the business 7 days a week. So it destroyed their lifestyle,
Wow.
And it made it very difficult to sell as well. In fact, I didn't list it in the end. It just would not have been a good way to go.
Man. Well, I know one of the fellows in our Lifter business networking group is in a printing franchise. And as a result of all the discussions we've had, again, along the lines we're talking about, that, design, what's the end in mind, and building the lifestyle you want. And again, they're baby boomers. So as you've said, essentially he's going to be selling the database. He's going to be selling the customer base because everything else is owned by the franchisee. And of course, in his case, they said, I think the franchisor takes a percentage of revenue as distinct from profit. So they want revenue. They're not that concerned about profits. And it's like, that in itself is an issue where the franchisor is rewarded for things that actually don't align with the franchisee. So it's not a win-win situation. It's a win-lose situation often.
Yeah, that's a good point, Leigh. A very good point. I know different franchisors operate in different ways, and there are good franchises out there, and there are some not so good franchises out there. I know of a pizza franchise that did a similar thing. It took a percentage of the revenue, and they would have special offers. They would put specials on, reduce the price to get the volume and everything up, get the revenue up, and the franchisee is not making any money out of it.
Mate, but just working crazy hours. Mate, it's just trade. So business, everyone has to say, I run my own business, I mean, I parody people going, oh yeah, I'm flat out, mate. I'm flat out. I'm so, oh mate, I'm so busy. I mean, but are you making any money, and what's your lifestyle like, mate? Mind that, what's your health like? Invariably, I'm so busy, haven't seen the kids forever. I've just had 2 heart attacks, and my wife has just left me. Well, that seems to be going pretty well for you then, So this whole idea, as you say, of being very strategic about it, and the 5-year plan, and then you mentioned also your workshops. How often do you do those workshops?
I've been doing them. I stopped doing them because of COVID, and I've only done one since. What I've done now is, because I find, again, you made the point that a lot of business owners are struggling for time. So to get along for a half-day workshop or a full day can be a struggle for them. So I'm now in the process of converting that all to an online system using a coaching platform where it's a done with you program. So the learning and the content that you need to know about how to value a business, what makes it saleable, what makes it attract buyers, what's the selling, all that's built in, because I've had that material for a long time. But it's built onto a coaching platform so that when we talk about your financials, the business owner uploads their financials, and then I'll go through them with the owner, and we'll work on their specific business. So they're getting the benefit of the workshop, if you like, but they're getting coaching alongside that as well, so that they come out of it with some tangible results and a plan. It's the 7 P's, Leigh. Prior preparation and planning prevents pretty poor performance.
Pretty poor. You're being very diplomatic there. That's right. And again, I think that's one of the values of coaching. As you know, my sweet spot is working with sales teams and sales managers and CEOs with sales teams. So that whole principle of, you're not just dumping information on people, but you're actually getting them to practice, implement, taking real life data. In my case, how'd you go with that customer, or what proposal are you working on there? What's the needs of that customer? And it's not just an academic course, but you're actually calibrating and coaching. So in your case, taking a look at their finances and being able to say, okay, well, based on that, we need to do A, B, C, D over the next 1, 2, 3, 4 years or so. What super value that is. And just on that, John, I like to ask some of these questions. What motivates you to do this? Because what motivates you, John, and why does that motivate you?
Yeah, okay. Motivation's a good one. Going through the sale process myself, learning how not to do it by getting it wrong the first time, and unfortunately not selling, and then learning the right way to do it made me realize how many business owners are in that situation. And I think every business owner should, having spent many years, blood, sweat and tears in the business, they should be able to get something for it at the end. And a lot of the more mature age owners are relying on selling their business to fund their retirement. You know, they may not have been putting money into super and building up that wealth, but relying on getting out of the business for. So it's helping those guys. And I love problem solving, Leigh. When I said I was an electrical and electronic engineer originally and in the computer industry. And I think some of the best times I've had have been fault finding systems and things when they're not working anymore. And it's a bit like looking at a business and saying, well, let me do my audit, let me do my analysis. So I've got an analytical brain. Sometimes it becomes analysis paralysis, but you know, the answers are usually there. They're in the financials, or they're in the systems, or all the other information I collect about the business. And we can find out what we can tweak, what levers to pull to get the best profit increase with the least effort, you know. And quite often it does come down to sales or selling the right thing. You know, my business partner and I got some help from a really good accountant who I still have an excellent relationship with and is helping some of my clients. He looked at our training business, analyzed everything in the business where the profits was, did a whole what if scenario, and as a result of going through that, showed us that my business partner and I were on the wrong track in terms of we were trying to sell the big ticket items, the $5,000 sales programs, leadership programs they were, but they were $5,000. And all our programs bar one were accredited programs under the RTO system. We had one program which was more of a personal development type program, and it was only $900. It didn't require any coaching. It could be run anytime. Anyway, we completely changed our strategy and focused on selling that program. If we couldn't get them into an accredited program, because it became it motivated the people that went through that program went back and sold our accredited programs.
Beautiful. So you created advocates, you created ambassadors on that lower cost. And again, being personal development, they're talking goals, they're talking attitude, they're talking motivation. So they've left the program in a very positive state.
Exactly. It proved to their managers that they were willing to learn and develop, and therefore the managers were then comfortable with paying for them to do the higher level programs. It became a no-brainer. It was a fantastic sales process, but that strategy, it's about knowing your numbers, and then from what the numbers are telling you, developing a strategy that's going to make things better.
Beautiful. As people say, the numbers tell the story. But you, as in my head, I'm thinking as you're talking, once an engineer, always an engineer. You know, it's the numbers and the systems, and the answer is in the numbers. That's fantastic. So just on that, John, I always like to ask people what books they're reading, because that often gives me an insight again in terms of leading their best life. So it helps me with research as well. What are the good books going around? But so what books are you reading at the moment? What do you got by the bed or wherever you read?
Yeah, okay. Well, you can see from the bookshelf, I've got plenty of books, but I do use Kindle a lot now. My favorite book of the moment is a book called The Road Less Stupid.
Oh, really?
By a guy called Keith Cunningham. Now,
Yes.
I did a whole lot of programs with Robert Kiyosaki back in the 90s.
As did I. I think we were there together. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I did Money in You and powerful presentations, creating wealth. And then I went off and did it 16 days in Hawaii, which is where I met Mal.
Oh, okay.
Our mutual friend, Mal Emery. We met up in Hawaii.
Yep.
Doing Robert Kiyosaki stuff. And then Keith Cunningham was actually one of Robert's trainers.
He was the Texan money man, wasn't he? Yes.
Yes, that's right.
I remember him. Yeah.
Well, funnily enough, as much as I loved him at the time, it wasn't until about 12 months ago I came across his book, one of his books, The Road Less Stupid. and it's a brilliant book for business owners. He's written it in typical Keith Cunningham style, so it's small chapters, 5 or 10 minutes per chapter, and they're all separate chapters. So, and he tells this up front, you can dip in and have whatever you want. You don't have to start at the beginning and read through the whole book. With my mentoring group that I've been running for about 15 years now, we meet monthly. I've now got them studying that chapters of that book.
Ah, fantastic.
And so on Friday, when we have our meeting, our March meeting, we'll be working on 2 of Keith's chapters about planning, getting clarity. Clarity leads to power, and planning. It's not about the plan. It's about the process of planning.
Yes.
It's not about the plan. So that one I would recommend to any business owner.
Yeah.
You've already mentioned the E-Myth. Atomic Habits is always to hand. James Clear, Atomic Habits. I don't know if you've come across that one.
Yes, I have. I've read it. It's fantastic. It's a great book, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
And the systems, again, from a systematic point of view, there it is, how habits form, how to break habits, making it easy, setting intention, stacking, all of those things. So super valuable. He's done a great job with that.
Yeah. And the other guy I follow a lot now is Daniel Priestley. He and a guy called Glenn Carlson have a business called Denton Global. They run a lot of webinars and things, but Daniel's written a book called Oversubscribed,
Okay.
which is about getting more demand for your products and services than you can service, so that you can put your price up, you can choose who you work with. It's an excellent book. And his other excellent book is KPI, Key Person of Influence.
I've heard of that. I've heard people talking about that, key person of influence.
They developed a scorecard system, which I subscribe to, which if people go to my website that you showed before, the orange button on there, it uses their scorecard system.
Oh, okay.
So it gets you to fill in a whole lot of questions about your business. Takes about 4 minutes. You get rid of my pop-up and go to the home page. So in about 4 minutes, you can answer the questions and you'll get a saleability score. It rates your business, it gives you an overall score, and it gives you a score in 7 different areas of your business.
Fantastic.
And it's free and it's quick, and it's just a starting point to get you to start thinking about where you can improve your business.
Right, fantastic. All right, I'll do that later on. That's brilliant. Well done. It tells people what the starting point is to do some work with you and ask some of those hard questions around, well, is my business saleable or not saleable? What do I need to do? And as you say, having a 3 to 5 year plan of the end game makes it super important. I always like to ask people around the question of mentoring and support. And to a certain extent, you've touched on it, but in your life, who have been some of the key mentors and coaches that have had a major influence? And even, do you recall some of the things that they said that have resonated and helped guide and even shift your thinking from that moment onwards? Who are some of the mentors and what are some of the things that have stuck with you?
Yeah. Well, I've already mentioned Robert Kiyosaki. I mean, he wasn't so much a mentor, more of a trainer, but he was, because we had a lot of one-on-one time with Robert through his programs.
Yep.
And you know, he was all about mindset and changing your mindset, getting your an understanding that the business is going to drive your lifestyle. So I mean, there was so much came out of those programs, Leigh. I wouldn't know where to start. Following on from that, as I said, that's where I met Mal Emery. Now, you and I have both worked with Mal and been part of Mal's programs and things. And I, in fact, had dinner with Mal a couple of weeks ago for his birthday.
Yes.
And so again, there's lots of things that he came up with. One thing that made a big change to my life, and he and I still talk about this, is I was having a bit of a hard time with business and one thing and another, and we sat down, had a coffee. He asked me what was going on, and and he said, look, he said, you need to give up the need to be right.
Mm.
I said, what do you mean? He said, well, you've got a real, because I was coaching and training, you know, and it was like, well, you're preaching to people as though you're always right. It's a bit like being a preacher, you know, you're telling people, and
I've got the good book and you have to believe in it.
Okay. Okay, I don't know that one.
No, I mean, it's like someone saying, you know, I've got the Bible, and because I'm reading from it, I have to be right. You know what I mean? No, so it's that sense of righteousness, which I do recall Kiyosaki talking about. Sometimes you're going to want to be so right, you'll be dead right. You know, I remember that one. But anyway, keep telling me the Mel story in terms of you give up the need to be right. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, well, what that did was it made me realize, and I've read other things about this since, that there are more ways to be right than just your way.
Yeah.
You know, and what's right for you isn't necessarily right for everyone. And people will believe what they want to believe. It's so that, and yeah, so I used to get into quite a few what we call them strong conversations, robust conversations. Don't call them arguments, a contest of ideas, and over a barbecue or over a few beers or whatever, just because I was pushing my point.
Yeah.
And I had that need that I had to convince people that I was right. And giving that up was so liberating, you know, because all those robust conversations, all those, all right, arguments, went away. And, life just became so much more peaceful. Friends like you more, business clients like you more, and you can get people to see things a different way by asking questions.
Yes.
And getting them to question their thinking rather than giving them the answers, saying,
absolutely.
No, this is how it is.
Well, it's essentially, it's almost the engineer's approach of, you know, because often in mathematics, there's only one answer and it's 33 or 65 or whatever the number is. Whereas, again, coming out of the Kiyosaki work and Blair Singer, I come across the quote, the Galileo quote of, you cannot teach a person anything, you can only help them discover it for themselves, which is Socrates also, you know, tell them nothing, ask questions, which again is NLP and Kiyosaki of questions hook the mind. The mind hates an unresolved loop. So if you ask the question and let the person come to the conclusion themselves, in most cases, they're going to believe themselves way more than you, particularly if, what do they say? A mind convinced against its will is of the same opinion still. So just because you beat a yes out of the person doesn't mean they actually mean, yes, I agree with you. But part of me wants to ask the question, what do you think the driving belief behind that behavior was, of you pushing that hard to prove that you were right? What was the driving belief there, do you think?
Well, the belief that I was right. but
yeah.
However, I think, and again, I don't know whether I got into engineering because of my mentality or whether getting into engineering created my mentality. I'm not sure which was chicken and egg. But I love data, I love facts, I love analyzing. And so when you do that, as you said, with maths, there's only one answer.
Yeah.
So it's interestingly, when I went from being an engineer to being a salesperson, all right, I had a really good manager, and it was literally having lunch with a salesman whom I had helped to sell a system to a hospital in London because of my technical knowledge. He told me over lunch, he bought me lunch and told me how much commission he was going to get for that sale. I went straight back to my manager and said, I want to go into sales.
Yeah, beautiful.
And he said, "You're an engineer." I said, "Yes, but I want to go into sales." And to his credit, he gave me the opportunity. And what I found, Leigh, was that, and he let me sink or swim for about a month or so. And every week he would get me in and have, "So what's happened this week? What have you sold?" "Oh, no, I had a really good conversation with so-and-so. He said, "Yeah, but it's not about conversation. It's about sales." And I said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, it's a bit tricky." I said, "People still treat me like an engineer." And he said, "Well, look at yourself in a mirror. What do you look like?" I had a full beard. I had long hair almost down to my shoulders.
Right.
I carried a notepad in my top pocket
Yeah,
and
beautiful.
a couple of screwdrivers and a pen, you know. He said, "So,"
Hiding. Yeah,
he said, "Yeah, so what image are you giving when you rock up to
yeah.
somebody?" I said, "Yeah, okay." So I shaved the beard off, got my hair cut, did all of that. But then he said, he got me to book in on a sales course. And what I learned from that sales program was, and this was again a turning point, a tipping point completely. What I learned was that people buy on emotion, not on logic.
Mm,
Being an engineer, I was selling everything on logic.
mm,
If I present a logical argument or a logical reason to these people as to why they should buy our system
mm,
and not the competitors, surely
mm,
they're going to buy.
mm,
Absolutely not. People don't buy on logic, they buy on emotion.
mm.
And
That
that
would have
was
been a paradigm shift right there for you. Massive.
absolutely, yeah, that completely changed my attitude to selling. And I went on to be a successful salesperson. I made the Quota Club 5 years in a row. Then I emigrated and came to Australia with Burroughs, the computer company,
Mm.
which became Unisys. And again, those companies did a lot of training. So it was a continual learning process. And I think we've all got to continue to learn. And no
Yeah.
matter how old we get or how experienced we get, because the world changes, the environment changes,
Yeah.
we need to keep changing. We need to keep learning. People need to keep doing your sales courses, Leigh.
Well, no, thank you for that plug. You're absolutely right. Literally, I just put a plan. Oh, this is interesting. Through an agency here in Perth that we've done a little bit of work with over the years, they said, "Leigh, we've got these people. They want to do some sales coaching of their sales team." So, I say the reason I'm into sales coaching is because I was so bad at it myself. And coming from university, we were sales snobs. We were literally having a master's degree. They go, "Well, if you go to university," I mean, again, this is what we call a bullshit belief that's implanted into the head. When some guy who's actually worked at a university his whole life tells you you don't need to sell, you just need to get a degree or a master's degree or a PhD, and the world will open its doors for you, which again is complete and utter bullshit. But that's their pitch. So I was a sales snob to the point where I didn't want to have anything. I didn't even want to. One of my mates said, "You've got to go to a Tom Hopkins seminar." And I said, I couldn't bear to be in the same room as all those salespeople. Like it was a real, as you can imagine, I had a real problem. But at the same time, I wanted to run my own business. So I needed to have conversations with people that led to a sale, which I didn't even know what I was doing. But so here we are 30 years later, and having written up all these systems, again, out of the E-Myth and Kiyosaki and a range of other things. I remember doing Wayne Morgan's sales program back in the 90s as well, one of the Kiyosaki team. But I wrote all these systems up to keep myself on the tram tracks. Otherwise, I talk about everything but what I was supposed to be there for, let alone asking questions and writing down questions and essentially to discipline myself. But in doing that, by teaching it to others who are far smarter and better, we've done magnificent work across Asia. The Chinese, I never forget, we ran a workshop up in Shenzhen. The Chinese from BSI had taken my systems and done absolute wonders, not only improving them, talk about Kaizen, but used it to grow their sales team by 30%. And I think they had record sales 3 years in a row. Again, only because they took what I taught and then applied it and did way better with it. And so literally this group, I followed my own system. I do a reasonably deep needs discovery. the agents, you couldn't believe it. So we went in there, I thought we were going to sell them about, I think it was 7 people times 4 or 5 coaching sessions. It ends up, it said, we're going to do a 90-day program, which was like 4 or 5 or 6 times the original fee. When I go in and present the 90-day program and we co-create, which again, we teach co-create the plan. Again, a principle of involvement equals ownership equals commitment. You want people committed to the plan, get them involved so they own it, so you co-create it. As distinct from, I'm the expert, take it or leave it. If you don't believe me, you're wrong, which again, one of my PhD mates still is using that approach, and I'm bashing him, slapping him around the head over that. The chief exec says, Leigh, okay, that's 90 days. That's all very well. But what is it going to look like if we do 1 or 2 or 3 years? So by following the sales process, again, asking questions, co-creating, I call it the Columbo. Remember that TV show Columbo, where the guy would act a bit dumb, but ask questions where the person would almost incriminate themselves. And I'm not in the business of incriminating, but I want to co-create. And so in following the process, again, which I've learned a lot from a guy called Alan Weiss, who's a superstar when it comes to selling consultancy services. A bit like yourself, 1 or 2 key points, 1 or 2 key ideas can do a massive, not the least of which, don't sell time, sell value.
Absolutely.
I mean, I would, and again, coming back to what you do, I imagine it's the fee. I don't know if you charge a set fee or it's a commission, but I would think the more zeros involved in the sale price, the more zeros should be coming back into your bank account, if possible. So, mate, it's fantastic talking to you, and I'd like us to continue, because there's other environments I think I should be sharing. Well, first of all, we're going to share this podcast on Spotify and YouTube and a range of other places, and you can use it as well. But it's so valuable. So let me go one thing. So what does the future look like for John Denton and John Denton's business? What's the future for you?
Good question. Have the end in mind.
Yes.
I don't really have an end, but my goal is to make the business more online, more global. I'm very, very WA centric at the moment, so that I can travel. I love travel. My wife and I travel a lot. It's one of our passions, and we've got people around the world we want to visit. So it's to be able to have the business still running with less of my time. So taking that workshop, as I mentioned before, and putting it online as a done with you online program, I can do that from anywhere that I can get access to the internet. So it's freeing myself up from having to be in Perth all the time. My mentoring group that I still run in Perth, I'll say that's been going for about 15 years. And the guys won't let me keep running it online because they like getting together. But I'm creating an online version of that so that I can run that from anywhere. So it'll be me, and again, having that interest and just love helping people and helping people get results, but doing it online from anywhere in the world. That's my goal.
Beautiful. And so it's your reverse engineering lifestyle, which is not dissimilar to myself. I mean, clearly there's such strong alignment between what we do in terms of helping people in businesses and in organizations, to be able to, as you say, have a lifestyle, travel, but helping people and being a little more flexible and not being like, and you say the internet gives you that opportunity. The other point you made there was there are real dangers in retiring. I see guys retire. In fact, I say to people, mate, just go to Floret Shopping Centre in the middle of the day and look at the coffee club. And you can see guys are sitting there with their wives of 30, 40, 50 years. And you can see they're, in my mind, now I could be projecting, and I think I probably am, but they looked absolutely bored. I've seen mates down the beach in the morning. They're lively 60 and 70-year-olds, and even later getting close to 80. And then I've bumped into them at that shopping centre in the middle of the day, and they are a completely different person. So having that purpose that invigorates you. I mean, I ran a workshop yesterday with a group, and we made a whole series of decisions and changes and coaching where you feel useful. I say to people, I feel like a happy old uncle. I get all warm in the trench coat because I've made a difference that day, and I think that's part of what keeps you going. When you all of that, if you close the door on that, and why would you? As long as we can keep doing it at whatever level we want to do it, and rather than, oh God, I've got to do it again today, but whatever frequency, it's fantastic, isn't it?
It is. It is. I had lunch last week with a gentleman whose business I sold when I was still broking. He did my half-day workshop. He did it twice. He did it first time. He went back and made some changes. I'll talk about failure to implement quickly and mentoring. He went back, he made some changes. He grew the business. He bought premises in Malaga, grew the business. Then he came and did my workshop again a couple of years later. And after that workshop, he said, can you come and work with me in the business and get it ready so that I can sell it in 2 or 3 years' time? So I started coaching him in the business, and he had started that business 20 or so years ago. So he had all the knowledge. I have to be careful what I say, Leigh, sometimes about businesses because of confidentiality. But
yes, of course.
So he had all the technical knowledge about the product and everything. He had all the relationships with the clients and with the suppliers. And that's one of the roadblocks as well to a good business sale. He had all those relationships, great business, profitable business. And I said, look, you've got to get yourself out of the business, get somebody in the business that can do what you're doing. And so I said, and we agreed, an operations manager with a view to make him the general manager would then make the business a heck of a lot more saleable. So he did that. He took the operations guy on. We worked on everything else in the business. After about 18 months, 2 years, he made the operations manager general manager. And then 6 months after that or so, the owner was saying, look, I only go into the business a couple of half days a week now. And I don't know what I do when I go in there. I only go in and see if everybody's all right.
Yeah.
And so we put it on the market and got a good sale out of that. But it sold because the guy that came into the business had no industry knowledge of that particular industry. But he had a general manager in place. So part of the sale agreement had some incentives in there to keep that guy in the business for a period of time anyway. But yes, it made that business such a good case study of separating the business owner from the business, making it a saleable, attracting buyers, and getting a buyer who knew nothing previously about that industry. That business is still going gangbusters. Anyway, it's about five years since that business sold, and that owner from then and I had lunch the other day, and he's now got the lifestyle that he wanted because he had in mind what he wanted to do after the sale. Sorry, I just wanted to touch on failure to implement.
Yep. Now do that.
Because with mentoring and coaching, and I'm sure you see this a lot, I sometimes get clients who typically don't stay clients for too long because they're not coachable.
Yes.
I know you talk a lot about mindset, and I love the Carol Dweck stuff, fixed mindset and growth mindset. And after working with someone for a few meetings, I can typically tell whether they've got a growth mindset or a fixed mindset. And if they've got a fixed mindset, then it's failure to implement, nothing changes. And yeah, and I don't know, Leigh, unless you've got some ideas, if you can change someone's mindset from fixed to growth.
Well, certainly know it all. I mean, in one of our online courses, I came across a quote from the guy that now is chief exec of Microsoft, and he said he was reading his kids a book to go to sleep, and the characters in the book was the know-it-all and the learn-it-all. and the know-it-all who couldn't be taught anything versus the learn-it-all who was happy to, the Japanese call it shoshin, beginner's mind, stay green. And of course, it meant that the know-it-all ended up being in all sorts of trouble versus a learn-it-all who's adaptable. But I know literally as part of my process, again, because I've made so many mistakes over the years, very early on in the conversation, I literally say, are you coachable? Because most people will, well, interesting enough, I've had situations where people will go, well, I'm not sure. And you go, well, get ready to run, because what we do know is as a coach consultant, when things don't happen, they don't blame themselves. They immediately blame the consultant was useless. The coach was useless. You know, I didn't learn anything. They didn't teach me anything new. It's like they didn't give me anything, you know, because their mind is, in fact, I think there's a Buddhist story of where the monk keeps tipping water into the cup and the cup overflows, because how do I put things in if it's already full? And basically often it's full of either false beliefs or full of bullshit, you know. But again, the person who's full of bullshit and the know-it-all, as you said, from a coaching point of view, well, I love that quote. Again, I don't know if Kiyosaki said it, but don't try and teach a pig how to dance. All you'll do is upset the pig and get a lot of mud on you. You know, but what I want to do, John, is show you what I've got planning in terms of my performance development consultants, because people keep coming, Leigh, where do I find a good salesperson? And eventually what I've done is I've said all the people I know, I'm putting a network together. And this is I call it the PDC roadmap of if a person's starting a business or has a problem in their business, right through to this, you know, maybe make it bigger for you, right through to the vision of, if they're a business owner, preparing the business for sale and exiting. So what I'm looking at doing is, if someone says, how do I do this? I'm immediately going to point them in your direction. Okay. In terms of that journey. So I want to have ongoing conversations with you, John, and also for you to know what I'm doing. So if you have people back at the other end where we can help in any of these other areas, even right through to performance management systems, scaling systems, even as people I have in the area of investments and wealth creation. And like over the years, we've done stuff in education and not-for-profit. So we've got people in that area. I also like helping sporting teams, but I've got a pile of people, because there's a strong relationship between sport and business. And then I've got other people where they run retreats and conferences and concerts. So there's an interrelationship between all of these areas. But at the end of the day, why is a business owner doing what they're doing? In the ideal, they should be smart enough to know I'm in the business of doing just what you're doing, which is preparing the business for sale. Mate, so before we wind up, is there anything I haven't covered or asked you that you'd like me to ask you?
Good question. No, I can't think of anything. We've covered a lot of ground, Leigh.
I know. I'm looking at my notes. Yeah.
And maybe you come and present to my mentoring group at some point if you want. There's it's called Business Owners Taking Action, because again, it's down to that failure to implement. You know, if you don't act, well, it's a waste of time. Just looking at my notes here that I've got.
The typical engineer, he had a whole pile of notes, folks. The proper preparation, preventing poor performance. Very good. Yes.
I've got a mind map here as well. I do a lot of things with mind maps.
Yeah.
So when I'm doing an audit for a business owner, I'll go through the mind map and tailor it for their business. No, if anybody wants to learn more, they can go to johndenton.com.au and have a look at that. If you're a business owner, then take that scorecard assessment. That's just the starting point.
Yeah.
And then please, if you do that assessment, schedule a debrief with me as well. I don't charge for the debrief, but sometimes, because that scorecard obviously has to be very general, so some questions will or won't apply to every business. So we need to talk through some of those things, but that's just the starting point to get people to know where they are now.
Brilliant. I highly recommend that, folks. Well, I'm looking at my notes here, everything from the original experience of getting 25% more or charging 25% more and the business selling to, as you say, having a life goal with lifestyle, the scaling up by partnering, the 5-year plan, the end game. We've talked about CRMs and the database, as Mel said, the money's in the list. People buy on emotion, not logic, which, as you say, was a major paradigm shift for an engineering person. So surely isn't it just women buying shoes buy on emotion? No, everything. Do I feel comfortable? Do I feel confident? Do I feel certain? Do I feel like I can trust you? All of those things, mate. There's so much there, and you, with that marvelous engineering brain, being able to look at the numbers. And I love that piece where you talked about the levers to pull. Your accountant showed you originally what levers to pull and how looking at that $900 program, which then set you up to actually transform the business. Folks, I highly recommend you go to johndenton.com. John, if we're talking about leading your best life, .com.au.
Yes, don't leave the AU off.
Okay, thank you for that.
Never been able to get the .com.
This is is there some John Denton in the US that's got your name as it, but there it is, johndenton.com.au, folks. It's so much. What's your business worth? Increasing the value, exiting with equity, brilliant stuff, mate. And there it is, the quiz. So I highly recommend you go to that, folks. John, let's stay in touch, mate, because there's so much we've shared, and let's see what else we can do together to help people create wealth, design the lives they want, and lead their best life. Thanks so much for your time today, mate. Pleasure. And remember, Leigh, a business is ready for sale is well worth keeping. Beautifully said, mate. Thanks very much, John. All right. Thanks, Leigh. Great talking to you. Bye.